This is part 2 of a 3-part seminar about advanced bass fishing techniques, specifically fishing the stick bait. John Blank is a bass pro angler and one of my associate guides. John gave this seminar at Cabela's in Tulalip, Washington, and it's packed with great information about fishing stick baits a variety of ways. Here in part 2, John talks about rigging and fishing the stick bait weightless and wacky style.
Good to go. So the first technique I'm going to talk to you guys about is the weightless technique for fishing a Cinco, okay, or a stick bait. And that's what this is. Very effective bait. If you don't have this in your tackle box and you're not throwing it on a consistent basis, you're missing out on the opportunity to catch smallmouth and largemouth fish. So 4 to 6 inch baits. Here's a 4-inch here that I'll throw. This is a 5-inch. Sometimes I go up to a 6. For whatever reason, bass cannot resist these. The predatory instinct of this bait slowly sinking down through the water column, they just can't resist it. And when nothing else works, this will work. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the properties of how to rig them up. So a 2/0 to 5/0 extra wide gap hook. So if you're looking at the hook, I'll show you up on the screen here. So you got the extra wide gap, 2/0 to 5/0. See how you have just the tip coming out here where you'll tie the line. It's tucked into the bait, comes underneath. And what you'll notice is the hook isn't exposed. So this bait is weedless. You can throw it in branches, around trees, under docks. It's not going to get hooked up. So generally, what you look at is you want a fairly decent hook like this. And for those that have never seen this hooked up, I'll show you how to do it. So what you're going to do is there's 2 parts to the worm. You got the bottom of the worm that comes to the point, and then you have the top of the worm that's more of a flat edge. You bring the point of the hook in just about a 1/4 inch, just like that. Feed it through, and then you're going to reverse the hook so it faces itself. Okay? Now you can see that's why you use the extra wide gap hook and how it's held in there. Then I'm going to make a straight line down and see the point of entry of the furthest point on the hook. I'm going to pinch it, come up, push it up and through, and you can see now I have a nice flesh worm sitting on there. Now, I'm going to do one other thing. I can catch my finger right here. So if I'm throwing this in the weeds and the brush, I'm going to get caught up. So I'm going to grab the bait and I'm going to push it forward, and I'm going to tuck the tip of the hook now is under the plastic skin. So when I talked about making sure you fish with a heavy power rod, or a medium power rod at least, I need to push this hook through the plastic into the fish's mouth. If I was using a really limber rod, what's going to happen? It's never going to bury this hook all the way down as much as I need it to. Now what I will say, when you're looking at hook selection, it costs a lot of money to drive to the boat ramp in fuel, and your time is valuable, and your boat gas is, isn't free, and the oil for your boat. Spend the money on good hooks. When you're looking at hooks, Gamakatsus, Trokars are phenomenal hooks, and if you want better success, I'll tell you what, I avoided fishing Trokars for a long time. And then I had a stint last year where I lost a couple fish that cost me a couple $1,000s by spitting the bait back at me at the boat. And I says, you know what, I'm going to try Trokars, and they're expensive. I have never in my life seen a hook perform like this hook does. They are so sharp. Instead of just hooking in the mouth, I was going completely through the gill plate and out the other side. And I'm sold. So for me, I'll spend the $6 to get a pack of hooks that are going to perform, especially for me, where that one fish can make the difference of a couple $1,000s. So, yes, sir.
How do you spell that?
Trokar, Trokor. and they have them here, and I'd be happy to show you guys. You know what? I did. I was fishing Lake Goodwin last year, and it was in the summer, and I was throwing a topwater bait that's no longer made, and I saw this big bass sitting about 5 feet under a dock under the overhang, and I made one of those perfect casts, and I've got a double treble hook propped bait going in there, and I'm like, you know, it's just one of those, I'm either going to get hung up on the dock or it's going to go right into where it needs to be. I went in there, it was perfect. I saw the fish's body language get staunch. I saw his gills go out, and I gave it just one little brrrp to pop the water on the top, and that fish came out and grabbed it, and it was 8+ pound fish. And I'm on the trolling motor, my adrenaline's going, and I got this fish, and I got it probably 10 feet from the boat, and boom. It's like, did I break my line? What happened? Reeled it up. I broke the hooks off of the prop bait, and they were gammy hooks that I put on. So, yeah. Some of it, that said, some of it is our own fault because we hook into stuff and we bend it back with the pliers, and so you got to be aware of that too, because I've broken fish off where I've used the hook longer than I should have. But yes, those were brand new hooks on that one, and that one hurt dearly. But thank God it wasn't in the tournament. I was just fun fishing. Yeah. But trocars, I will tell you, trocars, if you haven't taken a look at them, I'll show them to you. Ooh, they're worth their money in gold. I believe they do. I believe we can look at that when we're out there. Yeah. Yeah. So when you look at color choices, natural is my primary choice. You know, you got a watermelon, red and black flake. I throw all the time. You have a green pumpkin. I throw all the time. A baby bass, so two-tone. And then I also use kind of a orange and then watermelon, black and red flake. Those are my primary go-tos. It doesn't mean to say that a white or a purple or a blue isn't going to work, but if you're just getting into it and you're looking at what's my best color choices, because yes, it could be intimidating. You walk down the bass aisle and here's 60 different colors of all of one stick bait. Well, that's marketing. They got to keep putting new colors out to sell product. I was reading in my Bassmaster magazine, it was last month's issue, and they do an article on there where they they go to an unnamed lake, take a pro angler, and they follow all the different techniques and colors and what they caught their fish on. They took, I don't remember if it was a 4-year time frame of what the color was that was most common that they caught the fish on. It was black and blue, it was watermelon, it was green pumpkin. It's all the ones that I'm telling you about today. Those are the tried and true. Will the other ones work? Absolutely. But your natural colors of what they're going to eat on a regular basis, spend your money on those. So you can modify your lure up. There's things you could do to this bait when you cast it out there, and I should probably do, I'll get into the techniques of it. But you see how I've taken this and taken a pair of scissors and cut it? It's going to give it a little different fall now as it goes down through the water column, because this tail is going to be flapping and floating down, and when it reaches the bottom, it's inevitable if you feel the properties of one of these worms. It's like it always seems to move. It never stops, especially in the water. And that's what really triggers the bass to bite it. And it'll get a subtle movement as it's laying there, and that bass will come along and suck it up. But little techniques like this, or taking a screw bait and putting a little blade on it, so as it falls, it's falling a little different. Some people will take a nail weight and put a nail weight in there to get it as it's fluttering down. It'll give it a different motion. There's lots you can do with this bait, but super versatile when you fish it. So looking at the weightless stick baits, fishing uses docks. Throw these around the piling, skip them underneath the docks, beat the docks up, especially in the summer, because the fish are going to associate themselves to the shade around the docks. Really good. You got that hook, so it's protected, so you can bounce it off of things in the dock and not worried about getting hung up. Rocks. These work well around rocks, especially when you're doing something like this on a Texas rig, or if you nail weight it to get down smallmouth. Equally will eat this like there's no tomorrow, just like a largemouth will. So very versatile bait. Sunken trees and stumps, don't be afraid to cast in there. Okay, if you got this Texas rigged, and I'll talk about Texas rigging it, throw it right down in there, peg your weight, and go into where the fish are, because those fish will pull back into that cover, and they're an ambush fish. They're a predator. They're waiting for the opportunity of something weak to come by. And the deeper you can get into cover and the nastier stuff, you're going to want to up your line size if you're really going in combat fishing with a heavy rod. But very effective, very effective. Weed lines is another one. They use those weed lines as travel areas. They come out and they're grabbing the bait fish as they go by. Throw these along weed lines as well. So when you look at the retrieve, you're going to want to cast this out and you're going to want to let it sink. Okay, it sinks at a rate of about 1 foot per second. So when this hits the water, you're going to manually flip over your bail if you're using a spinning reel. Reel up your slack just enough so you kind of have a bow in your line going to the entry point on the water, because the bite will be very subtle most of the times when a bass picks this up. Okay, there will be times where they'll hit it like a freight train going 100 miles an hour and it takes off, but more often than not, they're going to come by as this is slowly sinking, and they're going to come up and they just suck it in. And all you're going to see in your line is like a little bump, and you're going to say, what was that? And if you're not paying attention, one of two things is going to happen. Either the fish will start to swim off with it, and you'll see your line move, or that fish will spit it back out. I watch my line very carefully. When you think you had an irregularity in your line, set the hook. Doesn't cost you anything to set the hook. It's free. You know, there's probably half of the times when I'm fishing a weightless bait like that, I see something that doesn't look right, I'm setting the hook. Half the time there's a fish, half the time there isn't. So don't be afraid. Doesn't cost you anything. Again, fish it on semi-slack line and watch for those unique movements, and set your hook hard. You're getting through the plastic. Sometimes you'll have a little slack in your line going down through. You're going to have to either reel down or just set it as hard as you can to bury that hook and go from there.
What about weight?
Weight?
When I fish on that, if I feel a little bit of weight on the line,
Yes. You feel it get heavy. Yeah, because what has happened is the fish grabbed it and it's swimming off with it. It's off on its merry way. So,
I've had to pick it up and they won't even move. They'll
Yeah.
just sit there.
yeah, they'll do that as well. So those irregularities, that's where you want to set that hook hard. So that's fishing it weightless. Really versatile there. So the next one is wacky worm style. And a lot of people are in here. It sounds like you're familiar with using it. I like to fish mine on a spinning rod. When I'm going wacky, a lot of times I trade down to a 4-inch, especially if I'm doing smallmouth. Seems to work really good. Lake Washington, I skip docks a lot for largemouth, and I'm very successful picking largemouth off in Lake Washington, skipping it. I use a 1/0, 1 to 1/0 wacky style hook, and I got one here. I'll show you guys. And I like the owner hooks when it comes to wacky rigging. If you guys want to look at it, I can hand it around and you guys can see it and pass it around. They're really sharp. They're soft. They penetrate well in through the fish, but that's a wacky hook. There's some that are weedless that have a weed guard on them. but you're not fishing that big heavy hook like you are if you're buried because your hook's exposed. And what it'll do, it doesn't matter the size of the fish, it's going to come in and grab that corner of that lip or up through the nose, and it'll punch through and hold that fish just fine. So how many of you are familiar with the little rubber O-ring tool below? Some probably are, some probably aren't. If you're going to fish Wacky style, and like you can see, you have the hook basically in the center of the worm. If these Cincos or stick baits or Ochos, depending on the brand you're throwing, they get expensive. And if you're burying that hook in the middle of this worm, what happens is, especially with Gary Yamagata baits, they're really good, but they're really soft. So if you're fishing one of Gary's baits and you hook a fish with that hook through there, that fish is going to bite it, and that's what you're going to end up with at the end of the day. And you're going to say, well, that's not bad, it's worth a fish. Well, you get in a spot where you're really getting into the fish, you can go through $14 in baits in no time at all. So the solution that's going to probably triple the life is this is a Wacky rig tool. So you take your worm, you insert it halfway in. This has rubber O-rings that it holds. You just slide these rubber O-rings up, and it's now snapped on the worm. So when you take your Wacky rig hook, instead of burying it into the worm, which I'm going to have to set the hook harder, now I come in right under the rubber O-ring and up, and my bait is there, and you can see the action you get with just very little movement. So as you're Wacky rigging and it's falling, I like to just take a little bit, and this is where I use the sensitivity off the top of my rod, and I'll just pop, pop as it sinks down to give it that action going all the way down to the bottom.
Well, that's it for part 2. Make sure you move on to part 3, where John will wrap up this seminar talking about fishing the stick bait, Texas rig style, and using the drop shot technique.